Alright everyone, so today I wanted to go over some rare champions that you can make really good without actually having to have good gear. And instead of focusing on their skill kit exclusively, I really wanted to talk about how you would build these champions in a way to make them really good without actually having to have that really good gear. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's go to, for our first champion, we are going to go over to the Undead Hordes and talk about who is probably one of the best rare champions in the game, and you can make absolutely amazing even without good gear, and that is going to be Frozen Banshee. Now, the reason why Frozen Banshee is number one on this list is because the primary damage that you are going to get from her is not actually going to be from her raw damage. It's going to be from her poison. She applies this poison sensitivity, and then once she does, then her skill 1, which doesn't have that cooldown, is going to apply a poison every time after that. So you're going to build up an insane amount of poison stacks on the enemy, and poison, of course, doesn't scale off of your gear. It's going to be scaling off of the HP of the enemies that you are facing. So, regardless of how much attack you have, you're still going to see the same numbers from poison, and that's where all the damage comes from. So, you can build a bunch of attack on her, but the amount of damage increase that you're going to see versus the amount of effort in terms of gearing that you're going to put into her, it's not going to be equivalent. So, what you really want to do is you want to focus around survivability and make sure that she stays alive. That's your number one priority with a champion like this. In fact, that's probably your number one priority with all champions. But then number 2 is going to be accuracy. You just want to make sure that she can actually apply this poison sensitivity so that she can end up getting her poisons. And besides that, if she's applying those debuffs and she's staying alive, that's where all of her damage is going to be coming from. So she does have this ability here as well. However, I believe it does not actually work on auto attack in things like the clan boss. But again, this is a support type ability where it doesn't really matter the gear that you have. It's just the pure power of this ability comes from the skill itself. And that's that turn meter fill. So really nice if you're on manual or if you're in situations where you can get benefit out of this without messing up like your, clan boss team and speed tuning. Overall, she's got a very good skill kit without having to rely on having a ton of attack in order to really benefit from it. So Frozen Banshee is number 1. Now, a consistent theme that you'll find is everything I just talked about had to do with poisons, and a lot of poisoners are actually not as gear dependent as you might think they are. Obviously, you need the accuracy in order to apply the poisons, but, in a lot of cases, you can still get some really high damage numbers from poisoners, even without going super crazy on, like the attack stat, for example. So just keep that in mind with other rares besides just Frozen Banshee. Okay, so let's go to the High Elves now and talk about a top tier support rare, and that is going to be Reliquary Tender. So she is a support rare, and even though her skill 1 here does have that weak version of decreased attack, that is not the main focus of this champion. Her main focus is really her second ability, which is removes all debuffs and places that continuous heal, 3-turn cooldown. Absolutely phenomenal support skill, and as long as you can keep Reliquary Tender alive, then all the power is going to be coming from the actual skill itself. Building a lot of attack is just kind of not really worth it on a champion like this. Obviously you can build more survivability, but once you're at that point where you're able to stay alive, you should be good to go and pretty much be able to see all the benefit from Reliquary Tender. She also does have a revive herself on her 3rd skill here, revives an ally with 30% HP and fills their turn meter. So, really with Reliquary Tender, all you want to do is just build up survivability, and, you should be good to go. Be able to get all the usefulness from her. Of course, get those rare skill books as well to lower the cooldown, especially on this ability right here. Very, very important. Most of the power, honestly, on Reliquary Tender is going to come from, just skill booking her and getting this to a lower cooldown rather than, going super crazy on her actual gear herself. All right, next up, let's go over to the Dwarves here and talk about another champion. Let's see, this guy right here, Runic Warder. So Runic Warder is another HP based champion, and this is a theme that you'll probably notice is that a lot of champions on this list here, they are not attack-based champions. Attack-based champions are much more gear-dependent because you need to obviously build attack in order to get more damage from them, but also you need to worry about that condition of staying alive. So they kind of have to focus on 2 separate stats at once, and that can be very difficult to do when it comes to gear. It's going to be tough to have good gear in order to kind of get a bunch of attack and get a bunch of survivability. So a lot of these champions are support based and based more on defensive stats. Now, Runic Warder here, he does have this attack, skill 1 here, which just does damage, but it's really his other skills that provide a lot of usefulness to him without really having to rely a lot on insanely good gear. So it has that chance of placing the decreased attack debuff, and his third ability places a reflect damage buff and a continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns. So like Reliquary Tender, a huge amount of the power of this champion is going to come from just getting the skill books on him and getting this ability cooldown lowered from 5 turns down to 3 turns. Obviously, as well, you do want to make sure that you have the accuracy in order to place this decreased attack debuff, so that is kind of important for this champion. But besides that, just having enough survivability, an HP pool, obviously speed where you can. Speed is important for pretty much all champions, and nothing is really ever going to change about that. But, that's going to be what you really need for this guy, and he can actually turn out to be pretty handy in certain situations. All right, next up here, let's go to Undead Horde and talk about one of my favorite champions in the game. I just love this guy, Doomscreech. So Doomscreech is another HP based champion, and he has a phenomenal skill kit that doesn't really require a whole lot of insanely good gear to get that usefulness from it. So his first ability here does have the decreased accuracy, but this is really, even like if you were to ignore this part of his skill kit, he's still got a lot of other stuff going for him. So we'll get back to this here in a second, but moving on to ability number 2, fills the turn meter of all allies by 30%, places a 60% increased defense buff on all allies. So doesn't really matter what kind of gear that you have, as long as you're staying alive, you are going to get the full benefit from this ability. It's got a turn meter fill, and it has the increased defense buff on all allies. And again, important thing about this guy is skill books. You can get this down to a 3-turn cooldown, and the great thing as well is everybody that I'm talking about is all rare champions. So we're not talking about epic or legendary books here, we're just talking about rare books. So phenomenal ability right there. Then you've also got this AoE, which places a shield buff equal to 30% of his HP. And the great thing about this is, this kind of ability is going to make it even easier for you to build him around survivability. So your number 1 goal should be HP and survivability. And then after that, if you still have, kind of the room to build a little bit of accuracy in order to place his actual debuff, that's totally fine. But, attack is going to be last on the list. Survivability, HP, then accuracy for his debuff, and finally, in last place, you would end up building him around attack, because his skills, his AoE, which is going to be his big skill here, scales only off of HP, whereas it's only his skill 1 here, which scales off of both the combination of HP and attack. So think of it this way: he's like 3 parts HP in terms of his damage and only 1 part attack. So obviously that's going to be at the absolute bottom of the priority list. So I love this champion. He's very, very good, very great support-based rare, and absolutely do not need godly gear in order to make him good. So next up here, let's go over to the High Elves, and let's actually talk about Apothecary, because obviously Apothecary is a champion where if you do have really good gear on him, you can make him absolutely phenomenal. However, you do not need good gear on him in order to make him a good champion. You could still use him, and he's still one of the best rares, even if you have mediocre gear. So even just ignoring his first ability right here, which is still going to be good with Giant Slayer without good gear, he's got his heal here, which can crit. So obviously that's going to be something that you want to work on. But his third ability here is absolutely huge. This is a big part of Apothecary, his speed buff and also his turn meter fill. And obviously, of course, you want to get skill books on that. And this is good regardless of the gear that you have. It's going to help out your team no matter if he's got, absolutely crazy, insane damage, and he's just in some of the best in slot gear that you can find, or if he's just, got good enough gear in order to survive. As long as he's consistently placing this ability, it's going to make him worth keeping up a slot in your team. So, the combination of this speed buff and turn meter fill, as well as his, very solid 2-turn heal that can crit, and his AoE random, which does attack 3 times. Even if you don't have a lot of damage on this ability right here, being able to get that extra damage from Giant Slayer is still going to provide a lot of usefulness for this skill. So very solid champion. He will get better with insanely good gear, but he's still top tier, even if you are, just putting introductory gear on him. And to end things off here, I wanted to talk about one of my favorite free farmable support rares who absolutely does not need good gear in order to be good, and that is Spirit Host. So Spirit Host is really strictly a support based champion. Her skill 1 here, technically it is attack based, but this is the absolute last priority for a champion like this. Like, this skill, don't even think about it. With her other stuff that she has to offer, this is the core of the champion. You've got her 50% attack buff on all allies for 2 turns with a 3-turn cooldown. You have a removes all debuffs and a block debuffs, which you can get down to a 5-turn cooldown, and you also have that speed in all battles by 10%. Number 1 goal with Spirit Host, stay alive. That's it, stay alive, and as long as she's able to stay alive and place the increased attack and also the remove debuffs and block debuffs, that's really all you're worried about. You know, you've got this aura. Even if she does die, obviously you still get the benefit to the aura, but as long as she's able to stay alive, the damage from her skill 1 is just minuscule. Don't worry about it, and you know, she's a very good introductory support-based champion, and she's also farmable in the campaign as well, which is great because you don't have to rely on the RNG of shards in order to get her. So anyway, that's going to be it for today. I just wanted to go over some rares that you could build in a way to have them be good, even if you don't actually have good gear yourself. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did and you want more videos like this in the future, consider subscribing to the channel. Feel free to leave a quick like as well. It means more than you can imagine, so thank you so much to all of you guys who decided to do that. And more Raid Shadow Legends videos, guides, tutorials, all that fun stuff should be popping up on the screen right about now. Feel free to check them out, but if not, until next time, take care everyone, have a fantastic day. This is Salt of the Salty Guild, signing out.